Hello developers, writers, and everyone who loves game design.
Welcome to DLC Not Included, our weekly podcast where we discuss game development, the industry, and everything in between.
We're your hosts, Steele
and Teal. Glad you could join us.
We really are, because this is exciting. This is the final episode of Season 2 of our podcast.
Yes!
And we're really excited. I think at this point we've almost been running the revival of DLC Not Included for an actual calendar year.
Yes, I think it has been about 12 months, yeah.
Pretty darn close. It is a beautiful day down in H-Town. It's cold, but it's not too cold. And it's really sunny and pretty.
It is a gorgeous day, and what a perfect day to launch our favorite topic.
Yes.
Game development.
Absolutely. We'll be having a brief feedback session afterwards with our live audience. And a shout out to our live audience. We hope you guys enjoy the show. And if you're watching us on VOD, we really hope you enjoy this, because this is going to be a doozy. Everything that we have talked about in Season 2.
It's all going to culminate in this topic, and we're talking about the core of your game.
So the core of your game is now when we're going to get completely theoretical and philosophical.
Absolutely.
Everything we started in Season 2 with the user experience and all the various pieces, parts, talking about lighting and cinematography
and sound.
All of that was stuff that is concrete. But now we need to take a step back and need to look at that core. Yeah. Which actually is this thing is tying everything together. This is essentially identifying what your game actually is.
Right. And I just want to point out that this is not about researching your game ideas.
Because you're going to do a lot of researching for this.
Mm-hmm. It's not about developing these ideas from concept to game.
Right.
See, that's an entirely different topic, and we could span a whole lot of podcasts on just that one topic.
Right.
No, we're talking about the philosophical essence, the core.
Right. What it is that your game actually is. So, let's kind of talk about what we're talking about. So this is understanding that essence. This is understanding that core. This is what kind of UX you want to deliver to your players. And to identify that core is to dive into the very philosophy of what you, the developer, are trying to accomplish with your game. So, you know how we're always talking, Teal, about here's how you are a good developer. Here's some best practices. Here's how you do some level design. Here's how you do, lighting. All these little concrete examples. But what are you trying to accomplish with the game?
And that's why we want to give you what we found that really works to really understand this topic.
Yes.
And we broke it down, into we call it the 4 foundations.
Right. Now, this is a term that we created, okay? This is not something you're going to find on a Google search.
You're not going to find it. We put this together for you guys.
Yes.
Because we want to focus on what we've been telling you are really the 4 most important design elements.
Right, that you're going to want to research, and there's that word research.
Research again,
when developing your game. Each one of these foundations, each one of these 4 foundations, when you have them brainstormed and you have them listed, they're going to influence everything you do on a design level afterwards.
Yes.
And if it sounds like we're hyping this, it's just because this is important. But you need to have all of the previous stuff in order to understand this abstract.
Yeah.
So for those of you who have worked or have delved into game development before, you may actually recognize some of these foundations. Let's just dive in, because this is going to be a nice, meaty podcast.
Okay, well, the first foundation that we want to talk about is design pillars.
So if you know what a design pillar is, you already have a leg up on this conversation. But if you don't, a design pillar in relation to game development are the main elements or emotions that your game is exploring or trying to make the player feel. And let's talk about that.
Okay, so
games invoke emotion. They invoke a feeling, a sensation, and they have elements that go, oh, this game does this. So you remember, as a game developer, you're trying to get the dopamine cycle release. That That is your main goal with the UX, is to get your player to play the game, have that anticipation of a reward, whatever that reward is, even if it's just, oh, that was fun, and then boom, the dopamine release. So let us go into elements and emotions in general.
Some of the elements that you could pull from, exploration,
right,
is one.
Right, so you have that enjoyment of exploring a world. And it could be a world that is very realistic, like our world, like you would have in like a GTA style game or something. Or it could be a world of massive pure fantasy, like a Final Fantasy game or Genshin Impact, or those or sci-fi world like Mass Effect. So it's that exploration of something outside of your own home.
Another element you could have is crafting.
People love to make stuff. That's one of your favorite things in a video game, isn't it, Tim?
Yes, it is. Crafting systems.
Right. So it doesn't matter if you have to go out and get reagents or mine, or it doesn't matter what the how is. But when you look at the element of crafting, you're invoking in someone that desire to make something, to gather and create something that has either a mechanical value, i.e. it helps them do something, or just a intrinsic value.
Because don't discount the emotion that comes with successfully crafting something.
Yeah, especially if it's something that takes a lot of time. And I don't mean an obsessive amount of time. We're not talking about the grind, but you have to work up to it. For example, in 7 days, I finally got a gyrocopter, and I spent a very long time gathering the materials, refining the materials, and then handing them over to Engineer Teal for the final assembly. So when I go around and fly around in 7 days in my gyrocopter, there's this rush of, I did this. So yeah,
that's one thing to do.
Yeah.
Hey, another element would be stealth.
Ooh, stealth is really good too. Now, if you're a fan of stealth games, there's nothing more satisfying than either sneaking past an enemy and just getting past them, or sneaking and stealth killing, something that feeling of you are the shadows.
Yeah.
They never saw it coming. It is a grand feeling. Speaking of killing an enemy, combat's also something to consider.
Yes, combat. Yes.
Games that have amazingly cool combos, or really neat limit breaks where the power flashes all over the place and your character's flying across the screen, whether it be an action RPG or a fighting game or JRPG, it doesn't matter. You get that feeling of, oh, I just whooped some booty, and you see the numbers, the damage pop-ups flying everywhere. It's a great feeling. And let's not overlook the most simple concept of all, which is just solving an obstacle.
Yeah. Moving past an obstacle, right?
Whatever that obstacle is. I mean, it could be a physical obstacle in a level. It could be a mental obstacle like a puzzle. It could be an obstacle like, hey, this character has to be persuaded.
Yeah.
And what's really good is when you have that multiple solution aspect and the player really feels like they solved it. Not that they came up with the solution, not they came up with your solution.
Right.
So these are all elements. There are dozens more. We're not going to go. These are just ones that we listed that we feel we can really relate to personally.
Right.
And that's something that you have to remember as a developer. You have to be able to relate to what you're creating.
And that leads us to the emotions. The emotions part of design pillars.
Yes.
Because you can have the transformational journey.
Yes.
Okay, that is a very powerful emotional journey.
Yeah. You have a character that starts off, maybe they're very selfish, self-centered, maybe they're very rude and off-putting. I mean, look at Squall.
Yeah.
Squall and Cloud, both of them were walking mental problems. One was really just psychologically screwed up. The other just had shut his heart off from the world. And over the course of both games, they go through that transformational journey to where they look in deep inside, see the demons in themselves, and then they come to terms with it, accepting the bad, and overcoming the parts that they can, and living with the parts that they cannot, because that's a transformational journey.
It is.
No one completely changes when they face their inner self. They accept the parts that they cannot change, and change the parts they can.
In leading to the next emotion, you talked about the transformational journey and the self transforming, but think about the people that were around Squall and Cloud. Character relationships
are also an emotion. We are by our very nature social beings. Even the most extreme extroverts even the shut-ins have some desire to be with someone else, even if it's just the contact of reading a letter or an email.
Yeah.
We're social creatures. So relationships between two characters, and when we say relationships, we're not just talking romantic.
No, we're talking about friendships, mentor, teacher student, familial relationships. Yeah.
A stranger across the street who just does something nice.
Yeah.
And that has a major impact. You know what they always say, small acts of kindness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, adversarial relationships.
Absolutely.
The best friend gone wrong, or the big bad guy.
The mortal enemy.
Yes, the mortal enemy. The nemesis.
The nemesis, like Voldemort and Harry. Neither can truly live until one or the other is gone.
Yeah.
So, you don't always think of these things in terms of positive. There are negative versions.
Yeah.
And there are odds that can be overcome, which is another one, overcoming odds.
Overcoming the odds, yeah. That is a huge emotional thing for your players to experience.
Right, like let's say there's something that just feels absolutely insurmountable, and there's just no way you can win, and then you find a way. Tales of Legendia, the first half of it.
Yes.
When it was like, the Nerphus, the ocean itself is turning against humanity, and the ocean itself is going to rise and kill humanity, and it seems so hopeless. And then they go into this cavern, and they discover there's technically two versions of the Nerphus.
Yeah.
There's the raging one, which is the ocean, the energy of the planet that wants to kill all humanity. But then there's the calm one that's learned to accept and says we can coexist. So there was this feeling of utter hopelessness, and then you're like, wait a minute. There is a hope.
Yeah.
We just have to find a way to make it work. And I mean, that's of course is one example, but anytime that a character or characters overcome something big, it feels emotional.
Here's another emotional thing for you to consider, and that's the bittersweet story.
Yeah, not everything is going to be, wine and roses.
You're not going to always have your happy ending.
No, it's very honestly, if something is too good all the time, it feels unreal.
Yeah.
Because life isn't like that. Yet you do want to have your feel goods. I mean, people play games to escape. But the reality is you as a designer need to consider the fact that maybe you need to have some bittersweet.
Yeah.
And bittersweet doesn't have to be too bitter.
No.
But it shows that, hey, not everything always turns out exactly the way you want. But sometimes you do get what you want. You do get what is deserved, like a justice for an injustice.
That's a big driver.
That's a great emotion to plug into. Hey, something terrible was done, and now we're going to make it right.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be a person, too. It could be a concept, like this thing that happened to our country was really bad.
Yeah.
Now we're going to go ahead and fix it.
We're going to fix it.
Not by getting revenge, but by making our country something amazing. So all of those emotions, everything we talked about with elements, all these are things you need to consider. And you don't have to go off of what we just listed. These are just the things that we brainstormed are important to us.
Right.
And remember, these are things you're brainstorming about your game. And you're going to come up with a huge list, but you're not going to use them all.
No, you're focusing on the big picture elements or emotions.
Right.
So, being a big picture, you want to keep it small.
Yeah, but how many would you say, Tim?
I would say 3 to 5.
Yeah, I would agree.
Of these big picture elements or emotions.
Or emotions, yeah, because if you have too many, the players will start getting confused as to what they're playing.
Yeah, and if you have too few, then the whole user experience is unfulfilling.
Yeah, so it's a good balancing act. There is no one true number, but we found, again, just throughout our lifetime and our career, that 3 to 5 is a pretty good amount.
Yeah.
You just want to keep it manageable so that you can focus really strongly on the ones you choose. Now, you can still have all the other elements and emotions.
Well, sure.
But those aren't your main focuses. So you can have it so that stealth doesn't make it to the final cut, but you can still have a stealth element.
Sure.
It's just not a focus of the game.
It's not a focus of the game, but it's still there.
Skyrim has stealth as an element, but it's not by any stretch of the imagination a pillar at all.
Right.
At all. We should probably start talking about some examples.
Okay.
Let me start off.
Sure.
So, like, for example, Near Automata, a game I absolutely love. Combat is a focus. Inner discovery, to be learning about herself and her emotions is a focus. Hopelessness versus hope.
Yeah.
The whole, humanity is extinct, but we still can continue existence, And then that esoteric, what is existence?
Right. See, that's one that the game, you don't initially think it's going to, you're experiencing that, but then you get into the game and
and then it has weapon collecting, which is very common for a Taro game too. How much shit can you get? What about you?
Oh, well, the thing that comes to my mind first is Atelier Sophie.
Ah, yes, your favorite Atelier game.
It is actually my favorite Atelier game. I'd say the main design element for that game is crafting.
Yes. Oh, yes. Because it kind of is the backbone of the whole series.
Yeah. But there's another element in there, and that's exploration.
Oh, yes. Yes, Sophie's world.
Yeah, Sophie has to get out and explore and go everywhere in order to find her mats.
Yeah.
So it really encourages exploration of everything.
It really, really does. It really does. Any other design pillars for Sophie?
Well, let's talk about some emotions.
Okay.
Character relationships are pretty big in Atelier games, and in Sophie, in particular, because she has such a strong bond with the book.
Yeah, what was the book's name? Plakta.
Yeah, Plakta.
Yeah.
And her relationship with Plakta is like a core focus, but Sophie meets all these people along the way, and she helps them, and the characters grow because of her. So it's all about character relationships. That's that emotional part,
Okay, let me go over one here. Dragon's Dogma. A game that, you either love or you feel meh about. But Dragon's Dogma also has an element of exploration. Now, Grand Sis isn't as big as some other worlds, but there's a lot of emptiness, but there is a lot of exploration.
There's a lot to discover in there.
And they also focus on a very unique combat. So combat's a big thing as well, especially since there's multiple ways to tackle every single boss, every single enemy.
I agree.
But there's also a strong thing of character relationships. Now, Dragon's Dogma has writing issues, but the relationships between the Arisen and the main pawn, and the Arisen and a couple of key NPCs, including whoever the true love ends up being, is really good. And again, it's a focus.
Yeah,
it is a focus. So I would call that a design pillar. You could also give you could also say questing would be one, because the game is literally laden with quests. But I would say that the three that I mentioned would be the biggest focuses of Dragon's Dogma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, my next example, Fallout New Vegas.
Oh, yes.
That can get a little complicated, but I think at its core, one of its main elements is exploration.
Yes.
This is a huge open world game.
Yes.
And yes, the plot has you going from here to here to here. But as you traverse the plot, you're going to all these different areas, and the game rewards you for exploration.
Yes.
And I think that is a main element, is that. And another main element, I think, is having multiple solutions, I think, to obstacles, because not only are various people obstacles, but you have situational obstacles, and there's no one right way to solve them.
Yeah.
Okay. For example, the main obstacle is who's going to control.
Vegas.
Who's going to control Vegas?
Yeah.
So the whole game you're going through and interacting with different factions and people. And it's all about that one focus.
I agree. Okay, and the last one, we're each going to choose 3 for these because each one's a little different. This last one's very different from what I talked about, and this is the horror game Layers of Fear.
Ah, yeah.
So the design element here are very, very emotional. The exploration's very little, so I wouldn't call that it. Atmosphere is a design pillar.
Yeah.
That is an absolute design pillar. The game thrives on that feeling of drawing you into its atmosphere where you're slowly losing control.
Yeah.
But it also has the emotional element of personal horror, where you realize throughout the course of the game that you are the monster, you are the murderer, you did a terrible thing, and the layers of fear that you're peeling back is your own guilt. So, it is a personal transformation, but it's a very negative one.
Yeah.
And then finally, there is a puzzle solving design pillar.
Mm-hmm.
It is puzzle solving. Now, the puzzles are very simple. They're not really that hard, but there is every step of the way you have to solve something to get the next piece of the puzzle to continue the story.
Yeah.
And it does a fantastic job of presenting all three of those pillars.
Along a similar vein of your layers of fear, I thought of The Room VR. A Dark Matter.
Yes.
Now, this is the only VR game of the Room series.
Right.
And hopefully they'll make more. But the main pillar of the Room VR is puzzle solving.
Yes.
And, they present each puzzle. It's unique puzzles, but you solve them in similar ways.
Yeah.
And I really think that that's the main driver of the Room VR. Another element I think that is pretty big is the emotion of the fulfillment you get from solving, and there's almost like it's a curiosity, it's an intrigue, because at the heart of it, the story is you're trying to resolve a mystery, you're trying to figure out who did what.
Yeah.
Why does this place exist?
Right.
So that feeling of discovery, of getting in there and finding out the truth, that's an emotional pillar.
And I would say that you could kind of call it overcoming odds, because the game is actually very difficult. It's not extremely difficult, but it is difficult.
Yeah.
It's short, but most of that is trying to figure out what, because you're not really given a lot of clues. I remember when we both played it, you're like, holy shit, you have to discover how the clues work.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of odds to overcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say that, definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, it's also the only VR title we're talking about today. But once you've identified, so the reason we did all of this was to show you that each of these games that are AAA games have very different pillars, and you have to identify your pillars. You have to sit down and do the homework.
Yep.
And really dive down and look at what your game is on a design level.
Because this is your foundation.
Yes.
Everything else you do after that is based on your brainstorming of what your design pillars are.
You're going to build on this.
Yes.
You're going to build on this, and this will lead us to the second foundation.
Yes, the feature set.
Yes, the feature set. Feature sets are super important. These are the things, now these are the things that, built upon your game's pillars, are what going to draw in and keep and hold the player's attention for the entirety of your game. So you have your pillars. That's your foundation. Now you have to go and say, okay, based on these pillars, what's going to keep the player's attention?
Yeah. And really, you should try to keep it between 5 and 10 feature sets.
Right.
Because if you have a whole lot, like more than 10, it's going to be very difficult to keep your player's attention.
Yeah, 100%.
Or focus, yeah.
100%. And you are going to see some similarities between your feature set and your design pillars, because they're based off of them. So you're going to brainstorm your list. And this is my recommendation personally, and Teal and I agreed on this.
Yeah.
So what you're going to do is you're going to brainstorm your list of feature sets, features that are going to be in your game. These are features. And you're going to have a huge-ass list.
Very big.
And you're going to strike down, you're going to go through the list, and you're going to strike down and remove anything that the game doesn't rely upon to deliver the UX. So you can still have a crafting element to your game, but if it doesn't deliver the UX at all, if it does nothing to further the user experience, strike it down.
Yeah.
You don't have it.
You want to remove the stuff that's nice to have from your list of features. You may want to, even though you may want to keep them in your game, you still need to strike them out, because what you're doing right now is focusing on your main feature set.
Right. So if you don't need a crafting system
Yeah.
in order to deliver the UX based on your design pillars, then strike it out and don't include it.
Yeah.
Never go, this is just nice to have. Because the moment you do that, the moment you have this is nice to have, you're going to create the fluff that's going to detract from the UX and is going to potentially be done poorly.
Yeah.
Now, you can have a mild version of a crafting system, literally where it's just you go up in a quest and, you give flowers to a alchemist and they make a potion.
Yeah.
And that's your quote-unquote crafting system. You're not building it. You're just collecting reagents during a quest and it's turning into something. But don't have your full-on crafting system with reagents and tables and matrices just because it's nice to have.
Yeah.
We're going to go over some examples, just a few. We're going to use the same games as before, but we'll go over a few feature sets.
Sure.
So we're not lingering.
Yeah. So why don't you start off with one of your favorite games?
Yeah, Nier Automata.
Yeah.
So Nier Automata, one of the feature sets is weapon collection.
Haha.
Yeah. You in fact, you actually can't get one of the endings unless you collect all the weapons. Another feature set in the game is combos. Bullet hell. The game does go into bullet hell multiple times.
Yes, it does.
So those are just few. I mean, there's a ton of feature sets, but immediately comes to mind, one of the feature set is the bullet hell sequences, and the weapon collection.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've been talking about earlier, Sophie. I would say that a feature set in there is the actual crafting. You're using an alchemy pot. You're using the pot. You're putting your reagents and stuff in there. And it's the combinations of those different materials that produce an item.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is a feature.
Yeah. The actual matrix that is
the actual
utilized.
Matrix that's utilized.
I think it's like a grid comes up and you have to place things in the grid. So
Yes,
that's
you
the
do.
feature. So in this case, the design pillar is the concept of crafting.
Right.
But
But the feature is actually using this matrix with the different colors, red and blue and green, and putting them together in a pattern that makes a really cool item.
Yeah. Dragon's Dogma. So I love Dragon's Dogma. I absolutely love it. And one of the feature sets is pawn trading.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because again, it goes off the whole character relation thing and sharing. But in this one, you can use a pawn of any one of your friends that are online.
Yes.
Or you can go public and just choose any pawn that exists. So it's cool because you create your main pawn, which is your character's constant companion throughout the entirety of the game, and other people can utilize that pawn, and you get rewards for them using your pawn. So it's just a feature I absolutely love about Dragon's Dogma, and it's very unique.
It is. I haven't seen other games really do that.
I know.
A deep dive into that.
Okay.
Fallout New Vegas.
Yeah.
Okay. I know that we've all played it, and there's all different things you can do. But I would say one of the core features of this is the reputation system.
Oh yes.
Because it's through the reputation system that a faction will ultimately, who's going to gain control of the desert, who's going to gain control of Vegas.
Yeah, who tries to kill your ass when you're walking around the desert.
Right. So your reputation system is pretty important in determining who's going to ultimately prevail.
Yeah. Oh, I just thought of another feature, if I may, for New Vegas. The VAT system.
Okay, VATs.
That's all the Fallouts.
That's all of Fallouts is the VAT system.
Yeah.
That is a unique core feature.
Yeah.
If you're not really good at the shooting from the hip, you can push a few buttons, open up VATs, and automatically target different parts of an enemy, and it guarantees you kills.
Side note, I love in Fallout 4, despite my issues with the story, that they make VATs into basically super bullet time.
Yes.
That's a super cool idea.
That is a good idea.
Okay, Layers of Fear. Layers of Fear, the feature set that I love is the fact that your character's walking all the time and you have a limp. So there's a pacing feature set. This is a little bit more abstract. You have to actually move yourself because you move slowly, and you got to figure out exactly how to get through the puzzles moving at the pace of a person with, I believe you have a wooden leg, a false leg.
Okay.
So, there's that. Another fantastic feature of Layers of Fear is the way they handle the hallucinations.
Aha.
Layers of Fear has massive hallucination sequences. And it's to me, that is one of the best feature sets is when your character starts hallucinating, they do it in a way that draws your attention to the center of the screen so that you're immersed in the hallucination the main character's having. Brilliantly done. Brilliantly done.
Taking a step back into, I guess, a broader overview scope, I want to talk about the main feature, the Room VR.
Okay.
And honestly, that is the puzzles. They are so unique. And especially in the VR version, you interact with the puzzle. There are times where you will step into a space and the little dollhouse that's in front of you, all of a sudden you warp inside the dollhouse.
Yeah.
And you have to do a few things and solve a few puzzles in the dollhouse.
Yeah.
Warp back out. And then that has affected a puzzle on the outside.
Yes.
Those puzzles are a unique feature.
So those are your feature sets. We gave a few examples from different games that we love, and you have to, based off your pillars, come up with your feature sets. Mm-hmm. Once you have your feature sets, you can move on to the third foundation, which
is your main gameplay loop.
All right. So we've talked about the gameplay loop before. There's different types of gameplay loops, but the one that you have to create during the conceptualization phase is the main gameplay loop, which are the moment-to-moment actions a player takes to play the game.
Yes.
You've got to know your main gameplay loop. They aren't the same as the reasons the players play.
Correct. So, in a racing game, the reason that you play it may just be to get on the leaderboard.
Right, but that's not how you play.
But that's not how you play.
That's turning the wheel and applying acceleration and brake.
Right. Hey, in an RPG, the reason is maybe the story or the characters or even the world itself.
But how you play is completing quests, killing monsters, and gaining loot.
Right. And, it's okay for your reason to play to be, more complex than the loop.
And it most likely is.
Yeah.
Players have an abstract reason to play games, but the method in which they play the game is relatively simple. It is so important that you get these main gameplay loops because without you knowing your game's main gameplay loop, so I repeat myself, you won't know how to design those elements. Those features that you just created based on your pillars, you're not going to implement them properly if you don't know your gameplay loop.
So in essence, what you're doing right here is you're titrating your player's actions down into second by second. So you can identify your loop.
Absolutely. We're going to go over a few of our examples again. So the gameplay loop in Nier Automata is run, attack, dodge. It is that simple. Or fly, attack, dodge. It is an extremely simple gameplay loop. The quest fulfillment is there as well. So it'd be like run, attack, dodge, complete quest. Run, attack, dodge, complete quest. The entire game is that. Your entire game is that.
Yeah, I would say it's even simpler for Adler Sophie.
Okay.
The gameplay loop is get a mat, throw it in the pot, and
make a thing.
Make a thing, yeah.
And the get the mat is just going out and getting the mat.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are on the field, some of them you have to get from killing things. It's literally just you get a mat. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a very simple gameplay loop. Dragon's Dogma. Go to area, kill a monster, upgrade your character. It's, go, kill, upgrade. Because Dragon Dogma is so gear focused.
Yes, it is.
That, you have your vocations, that helps make your character stronger. You have gear, that's your character. So it's literally just explore, fight, improve.
Yeah.
That's the game. That's the loop.
Well, I could say that Fallout New Vegas is the same way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Explore, shoot and kill, and level up.
Yeah, level up. Yeah, that's it. Layers of Fear. Explore, solve a puzzle, get scared.
Oh, yeah.
It is that. It is you're moving through a place, solving puzzles, while the environment and jump scares are creeping you the hell out. So it is move. It is walk, solve, scream. There you go.
And again, taking that a step back for the Room VR, walk solve.
Yeah. Games like that, puzzle games, are extremely simple in their gameplay.
Very much so.
But it's understanding the implementation of that and taking the gameplay loop, and that's how you're going to build the gameplay itself.
Yeah.
Following that loop, and you're going to create a bunch of moments in which the player is exploring and experiencing your game, which leads us into the last foundation.
Yeah, we talk about wow moments.
Yeah, this is the final foundation. What is a wow moment?
Okay, well, these are the moments that typically will stand out to your player long after they start playing. And they can be positive moments, or they can be negative moments.
Yeah. Aerith's death in Final Fantasy VII OG is an absolute wow moment. The world is still, to this day, talking about it.
Yeah.
And it's a negative moment. It is horrible. You lose a character who's literally your messiah. I know you hated her back then.
It was a positive moment for me. But it's still a moment, a very memorable moment.
Yes, 100%. So when coming up with your list of wow moments, write down the specific emotion you're trying to evoke.
Yeah.
And if this is the part where you say, but Steele, what are you talking about? How am I going to know what moments are really awesome? Okay, that's when I look at you and say, there's no way, Mr. and Mrs. Game Developer, there is no way in the world you haven't either been in the shower, driving somewhere, doodling while you're in class because you're bored, on the toilet, waiting for a doctor's appointment, anything, and you haven't gone, oh, there's this really cool thing I want to do in the game, and it's going to be the most awesomest scene ever. That's your wow moments.
Yeah.
That's it. Now, you don't want to have too few, right?
Right. Because then there's nothing memorable about your game.
So 1 to 2 is probably too few. And
Yeah.
you don't want to have too many because they'll lose their impact. So what's a good one?
I'd say anything more than 5
Yeah.
of these in a typical game, it starts to lose its impact.
Now, what we're talking about is deliberately crafting your wow moments.
Yes.
You could unintentionally, over the creation of your game, come up with a scene you're like, this is really amazing. And the players end up loving it. And they talk about it. But we're talking about deliberately inserting the wow moments, not having them organically come through your awesome game development skills.
Yeah.
Let's go over our list one more time.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Nier Automata. The true ending sequence.
Ooh.
From the final bullet hell to the last animation to the most difficult choice you're ever going to make. That is a moment I will never forget. And I love Nier Automata. I have played the shit out of it. I've gotten all 26 endings. Mwah! Chef's freaking kiss. But I will never forget the true ending sequence. Amazing. Another one is the operatic sequence.
I was just thinking about that.
Specifically when you're 9S.
Oh, yeah.
And you're seeing the emotions of the opera robot and how she got turned into this monster.
Yeah.
Mwah, chef's kiss.
And what about the We Are As Gods?
Yes, the whole oh my God. Thank you. The whole We Are As Gods moment in the factory.
Yes, in the factory.
Become as gods.
Become as gods, yeah.
So those are 3, there you go. Those are 3 moments in that game that everyone remembers from now until eternity. Your turn.
Okay, so in Adler Sophie, I think one of the biggest wow moments is when Plokta goes from being a book to having a body.
Yeah, like a doll body, right?
A doll body, yes. Because you're not sure if this is going to work.
Yeah.
Nobody is sure if this is going to work. And then when it does work and she emerges and she is that pretty cute little doll, it's like, wow. And I mean, from then on, the game has changed.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so did you have any more for Atelier? Because I got some for Dragon's Dogma that punch you right in the face.
Oh, no, go for it. Go for it.
Okay, so Dragon's Dogma has a number of wow moments, most of them to do with the false and true ending. The game itself is all right. When you first start fighting Gogori the Dragon in the false ending, that whole sequence is amazing. But when you're on his back while he's flying, holy shit. However, that pales in comparison to the true final boss and the true final battle. And I'm going to spoil the game, when you reach the Seneschal, after the entire sequence where he kind of fights you and he makes you go through the tunnel and, you go through all these trials to get to him. When you reach the Seneschal, God rips off its cloak and it's the person you played in the prologue, the previous Arisen. And you're like, holy shit, God is what I am. And you fight the Seneschal, and then the Seneschal says, when you beat him, all of this was to test you, you're my successor. And you become God. That is just holy shit. And then the final ending itself, when you commit suicide and your main pawn becomes a living being instead of a doll.
Yeah.
It's just so good. It's like Dragon's Dogma saved all of its amazing for its last 30 minutes.
Yeah. Well, on the opposite side, New Vegas, Fallout New Vegas, hits you at the very beginning.
Yeah.
With the biggest wow moment I have seen in video games.
Yeah.
And that's what Benny does to you, your character, the courier, in the very beginning.
His whole speech.
Yeah.
Where he pulls out his gun and he's like, from where you're standing, it looks like 40 carats of bad luck. Or 24 carats of bad luck. It's just so good.
Yeah. Yeah.
The game was rigged from the start. Bang.
Bang. And you're dead.
That's it.
You freaking die.
Yeah. And you only live, you only survive, come back, because the doctor was a vault dweller. No, his wife was a vault dweller. He's just good enough to dig the bullet out of your brain.
Yeah, absolutely. And another wow moment in New Vegas.
Yeah.
Is when you find out who Mr. House is.
Especially if you're a fan of the Fallout series and you've been following Robco, the company, forever.
Yeah.
Finding out that Robert House is the CEO and founder of Robco. So it made me, as a Fallout fan, giggle like a little girl.
Yeah.
And Teal, who was just a fan of the Fallout series at the 3 in New Vegas, was like...
I shrieked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a huge wow moment.
Yeah.
But let's go to Layers of Fear.
Okay, Layers of Fear has a number of wow moments. One of the biggest ones is the revelation of the painting at the end, when you realize you killed your wife and used her phone to mix with her blood to paint the picture. It is just so terrifying when you realize you're a monster.
Yeah.
Another wow moment is the first reveal of the painting, and you realize it's blank. The carousel scene inside the baby's room. It's so important because
that carousel scene.
Because the light's shining and you're hearing the baby crying and you're getting all these hallucinations, because that's what drove him mad, was them losing their baby.
Yeah,
it was just it was so good. Okay, your turn.
The Room VR.
Yeah.
It has a lot of moments associated with the puzzle solving. But this is how you can actually get really creative with your wow moments. But I'd say the first and most impactful wow moment was when I warped inside the dollhouse.
Yes.
I wasn't expecting that to happen. You know, when you're playing through a game, typical puzzle game, you're out in the real world and you're doing stuff. But to actually, as part of the puzzle solving, to go inside a puzzle.
Yeah.
It's a puzzle within a puzzle.
That's right.
You solve it, and then you warp back outside and finish solving the puzzle. Holy crap.
Absolutely. So the reason that we have brought up these wow moments, the reason we used these 6 games for each of these foundations, is so that you could hear the energy in our voices. Because the design pillars of these 6 games create a very strong foundation.
Yes.
The feature sets make it so that as the player is playing, they have a focus. The gameplay loops of these 6 games are simple enough that the player can play them and experience what the designers intended. And the wow moments, again, the energy we just exhibited is the game becoming memorable.
Yes.
That's why these are the 4 foundations. These are the things you as a developer need to focus on philosophically, so that you'll know what your game is and what you're trying to deliver with, going back to the first episode of the season, the user experience.
That's right.
So let's wrap this up. Where do we go from here?
Okay. Well, first of all, once you have all these 4 foundations defined, you'll know what to base every design decision off of.
Yeah. Okay? So from now on, once you have these foundations listed and you know exactly what type of game you're created, every single design decision is based off of it.
Yeah.
I know I just paraphrased what Teal said, but it is literally that. Everything.
Yeah, you'll know when to cut something from your game. If it takes away from or goes against the foundation, then remove it.
And you'll know when to add something because, yes, no game ever existed where they didn't at some point add a thing that wasn't a part of the original vision or design. But you'll know when to add it and when not to, because if it doesn't build off the foundation, if it goes counter to the one, then you won't add it.
Yeah.
But if it goes with a foundation, if it enhances a foundation, if it builds off a foundation, you'll go, yeah, I can add this feature, this part to my game. Your game will remain focused, okay? Your game's going to remain focused, and it's going to deliver a powerful and memorable user experience. In the very first episode of Season 2, we talked about UX, and the entire second season we have said the UX is king. Now you know, based off of the core of your game and learning of these 4 foundations, how to deliver the most memorable UX possible.
And that's it.
Okay, so now it's time for us to take questions from our live audience.
If you've been watching, remember to use the podcast question feature in our chat.
We'll give you guys a few minutes because we understand this was a metric butt ton to absorb. This is a lot. This is huge.
But it's a capstone of our entire season.
Yes.
And take everything that you have learned from us and put it into your core.
Yeah. And then, I know it seems counterintuitive, perhaps, that we took the very first thing you did and made it the last episode of this season. But it's not. Because you had to learn everything we just talked about in order to understand philosophically why you do this.
Exactly.
And now you'll take it and you'll go, okay, I got my foundations. Now I can design my game.
And for those of you who are noodling around with a game idea, I'd love to have you tell us about your experience. You know, I did the whole foundation thing. I planned it out like this, and I did this and this. And I'd like to hear from you by following these principles and these concepts.
Absolutely.
How was your experience at developing your game?
And to build off of that, but in a different tangent, so tangential to this, we have during our Game Maker forums and during our podcasts, our Game Maker forums and our AMAs, which you can find on Twitch, we have a lot of times we'll have people ask specifics. What about this? What are your thoughts on this? What about this? And Teal and I have held our tongue on, hold on, we're going to get there. Because a lot of the questions we're asked, and please continue to ask them, guys, we love helping, can be answered by understanding your game's foundation.
Yeah.
By understanding your game's core. So yeah, it's kind of like, again, it seems counterintuitive, but you have to learn the rules of the how-tos.
Yep. Before you can learn the why.
Yeah.
Why do we do this?
It seems counterintuitive, but it is true. In this case, you can't learn the philosophy until you learn everything that makes it.
That's true.
Okay, since we're not seeing any questions, and I understand, plus me, I get it. If you have any questions, you can put it on the YouTube comment section.
Yeah. And we will address your questions if you put them in the comments, or if you post them on our server, direct message us.
Yes.
You know, we will answer your questions.
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone who is listening. Thank you for being a part of Season 2 of DLC Not Included. We are totally looking forward to Season 3, but we're going to have a bit of a break. We need it.
Yeah.
But we love you guys. If you're listening to us live, thank you for listening to this extremely abstract episode. And if you're listening to us on VOD, whether it be iHeartRadio, iTunes, Amazon Music, etc., thank you for being part of our audience. And if you're listening on YouTube, please leave a comment. Let us know what you think about Season 2.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. So join us next time for DLC Not Included. And remember,
anyone can give you the key, but you have to go through the door.